Hello everyone, welcome to my new video. Today we will be talking about how working on your listening skill can help you to speak your target language way better. If you don't know me, I'm İclal. I'm an 18-year-old polyglot from Turkey and I speak quite a few languages. In this channel, I share my experience with the languages that I'm learning and I try to give some useful advice. Listening is probably my favorite skill to talk about and my favorite skill to practice. It has a great impact on everything. Listening to your target language can change your life, can change your whole language learning progress. So in this video I want to elaborate a few things. As you know, there are main language learning skills that we talk about: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So these skills actually can be divided into two groups: the active ones and the passive ones. The active ones are as you can imagine, the ones that you produce with your own knowledge, like you can write something or you can speak about something. Both of those things are the things that you make on your own. And we have the passive skills on the other side, and those are listening and reading. So you can read something that someone else has written, or you can listen to something that someone else is saying to you. And if you want to improve your speaking, the first thing that you should do is to speak. And the second thing is to listen. Today I want to talk about this life-changing skill. Listening to some authentic content from the countries where your target language is spoken is the key if you like to start speaking this language fluency. Recently I was looking for a way to enhance my proficiency in Spanish language and I stumbled upon jiveworld. Jiveworld is a self-studying platform for intermediate Spanish learners. It basically introduces you some radio stories from all Spanish-speaking countries that you can imagine. Those stories are taken from Radio Ambulante and here are native speakers talking about their own stories about different topics. And you may think that that's quite difficult to follow, that's quite difficult to understand because everyone has their own way of speaking, different idioms that they're using, and you may think that that's just difficult. But jiveworld has so many features that makes it easier to understand native speakers. For example, you can just adjust the speed as you want, you can see the challenging vocabulary, or you can see the translation according to the context of the story. But something I want to talk about is sound bites. Because sound bites is a feature recently introduced by jiveworld. Sound bites are like mini lessons created by jiveworld stories. And the great thing is that the daily sound bites are completely for free. You don't even need to buy a subscription or create your own account. You can just go and practice the daily sound bites. It's like a puzzle created from that story and the topics can vary from pronunciation, grammar, culture, history, vocabulary, slangs, idioms, everything you can imagine that's related to language learning. And I get to learn a lot of interesting stuff that's used by natives. I really appreciate using this tool because it helps me to get to know the authentic Spanish talked in Spanish-speaking countries. And it's just a great tool to get a step closer to the way that native speakers actually speak this language. If that sounds interesting and if you'd like to try that for free today, you can just start practicing today's soundbite by clicking the link that's in the description of this video. Just make sure to check because you won't lose anything. Recently, if you remember or if you watched that, I made a video about pronunciation. A lot of points to elaborate about that. Because pronunciation is it's not so difficult to think about it. It's related to listening, like everything else. But it's not the only thing that's related to listening. Even the grammar can be related to listening. Your way of speaking, the accuracy of your speech, the amount of the vocabulary that you're using, everything that you can imagine that contributes to the way that you speak is probably somehow related to listening. Listening can even help you reduce your focus on the annoying parts of language learning. Those are annoying as a fact, but you can't just avoid them simply. Listening is actually a really good way to reduce your focus on that, or just help you to detach from them. For instance, listening can help you to build a sprachgefühl. You may be wondering how some people are speaking a foreign language, as if they are not thinking at all about what they're saying. They're just speaking it so naturally, without thinking, and it sounds correct. It's because those people have their inner voice telling them what would be correct to say. Sprachgefühl is translated as language feeling. You actually have the feeling for the language, okay? Your ear just lets you know how to say the things correctly. For example, recently I took a French exam and there were some questions about grammar, quite tricky, because French tenses are a nightmare. It would define like that. But I learned them as all of you many years ago, and I studied them, I learned them with details, I did many exercises, and then I just forgot about the frustrating part, and I went on with my life. I went on with listening, practicing the French language. I listened to French language every day for a few years. And right now I have the sprachgefühl, because when I see a grammar exercise, I can just do it correctly, but I don't know how it works. How that rule works, why you chose that and not that. I don't know, because it's how the French language works. I just have my inner voice telling me what's true. That's something that you can build in years, maybe. The way to create this is listening as much as possible. Getting exposed to this language, hearing it everywhere. Recently I was trying to decide the article of a German word, because it can be quite confusing, it can be everything, der, die, das. Choose one of them. So I just thought do I have some examples in my brain? Maybe I heard that word in a song, I heard it somewhere. And after a while I remembered that I heard a phrase in Germany many times, so that's how I actually decided correctly. It can be quite effective to just listen to language regularly and to get exposed to a lot of things, instead of writing that word 50 times to your notebook and learning the article in that way. You would be learning in both ways, but if you'd like to be it easier for your brain to recall the information and to speak in a way that looks like you are not even thinking of that, you are just speaking as if it was your native language, which is quite impressive. If you like to talk like this, you should focus on your listening. Creating a sprachgefühl can also help you to find the correct pronunciation of the things. For example, if you just have brand new language, you probably don't know how the things are pronounced, but if I bring you a text in a language that you are already learning since a while, you would probably get the most of the pronunciation correct, because you know how the things work. So if you like to know how the things work in your target language, focus on your listening. Imitating native speakers, their way of talking, their expressions, their intonations is something that I talk about in one of my really recent videos. So if you want to watch that in a detailed way, you can just check the video. But here I want to mostly talk about the listening aspect of the things. So I always repeat that thing in my videos because that's one of my top advices when it comes to language learning. You create yourself a brand new YouTube account. It's not so hard to do that. And you just subscribe to a bunch of accounts that speak in that language. Most of the things that you're interested in, but influencers, news, music, cooking in that language, content for natives, content for learners, everything, and you just build yourself a page where you are surely getting exposed to that language. I have this for every other language that I'm learning, and that's where I study those languages, where I find materials from. But also, whenever I have free time, whenever I really don't feel like sitting and studying Russian for 30 minutes, I just go to my Russian YouTube and I watch some random girl talking about her life. That's maybe not the thing that will take you from the zero and make you fluent at the end, but that's definitely the thing where you get closer to native speakers. Recently, on TikTok, on Instagram, I'm always complaining about my Swedish pronunciation. And I actually know what's wrong with my Swedish pronunciation, because right now I'm just trying to figure out how the things work in this language, like the grammar, the essential vocabulary. I'm following a textbook even. That's a thing that I'm supposed to learn right now. So I just don't spend a lot of time listening to Swedish language and then ask myself why my pronunciation doesn't sound like my Swedish friends. Maybe listening to more things is easier when you have the intermediate level at least, but I'm saying it both for you and myself. Listening to things at every other language level, listening to authentic stuff, native speakers talking in that language, both for teaching purposes and for native speakers, is quite essential. If you're a beginner, make sure that you are learning all the essential things, you're following with the structure, you're following with the A1, A2 content of that language. But once you get kind of comfortable, just try to increase the amount of time that you give to listening and learn how to transfer your free times to a language practice. That's not boring, that's not overwhelming, believe me, because the things that you do in your real life, do them in your target language. Watching a Netflix series in Spanish and German shouldn't be quite challenging, right? But as I said, that's not the only way that you're learning. Just make sure that you're learning the essentials and then continue with these steps. After reaching a certain level, you can actually make listening or audio materials your main way of learning. Because right now, as I don't want to study something, for example in Russian language, I just don't follow a textbook, but I go and watch random videos in YouTube, mostly with teaching purposes, and I make notes from the vocabulary that I don't know, or I make notes with the phrases that sound really well structured, or the phrase that I can actually understand, but I wouldn't be able to build in my head for my own speeches. This kind of stuff is quite essential. If you're using an audio material to learn a language, like you may be listening to podcasts, you may be watching those videos where people make easier videos for language learners, the key to actually understand the most of the thing and the key to start talking like those people is actually listening to those stuff a lot. For instance, a quite basic listening exercise that you can try doing on a daily basis is you can find a YouTube video that's interesting for you, and then you can watch it a few times without necessarily understanding everything that's said in detail. And then you can activate subtitles if there are any, and then you can work on the words that you don't know. You can just simply check out their meanings on a dictionary, and then you can just turn back to that video and you can listen to it many times again. And something that I like to do when I'm learning vocabulary through listening is, after listening to that video, I talk to myself about the content that I watch, and I try to find different point of views, different arguments to the topic. That's something that you can do as you're getting closer to the advanced level in that language. If you take all necessary steps, actually listening can even become your main way of learning, because actually that's how the language works. Language is spoken and heard. It can help you build your sprachgefühl, it can help you get the correct pronunciation, you will sound like a native at the end, you can talk in a more correct way, and listening is a quite enjoyable way to learn a language. And eventually you will realize how much you're progressing. Because sometimes you will think that I was watching this Spanish video with subtitles, but right now I can actually pick up the words by myself. Even if they are talking in a different way than the one that I was used to, you will start to realize that you can actually pick up many things. By the time you will dive into this language, an increase in your comprehension level is a sign that you will start speaking better. So just ensure that you're listening to as many things as possible and make that stuff interesting, so that you can maintain your motivation to go on learning this language. And never forget that language learning is actually quite fun when you know how to do it. That was all that I wanted to talk about in this video. Hopefully you found it quite helpful. If you'd like to see more content about language learning, you can follow my videos on YouTube and make sure to check my Instagram account as well. See you in another video soon, and bye!